May 19th. Good evening, I'm Alice Norris, the mayor.
James Mesita, Commissioner.
Maybe Commissioner President.
Rocky Smith, Commissioner.
Daphne West, Commissioner. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next thing is always an honor to administer the oath of office to two new police officers, one a reserve and one joining our regular force. So if Chief Conrad, would you like to help us administer, and we'll invite William Horton and Cornelius Booker to please come forward. Interest of television and sound. You want to talk first, Chief?
I'd like to introduce two new officers to our department. We're glad to have both of them on board. First, Bill Horton is the new regular police officer. He's a officer, he was an officer with Tiger Police Department, so about 2 years there, and came over here to work with us. Really excited about that. He graduated from Canby High School. And kind of a fun thing about Bill, he just got married on May 8th. And I'm not sure if more dangerous or exciting, marriage or and they just got back from the honeymoon in Maui too. So and Cornelius Booker is our new reserve officer. He is a retired Army major. He is graduate of the Clackamas County Reserve Academy in 2007. He was a reserve deputy with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, and he has a master's degree from Golden State College in California, and his wife Stephanie is here tonight.
Chief, I commend you on your selection to a very distinguished gentleman to join us for RBC. I would like to administer the oath to separately, since you're both holding separate positions of authority. So, that's the wrong one. So you're William, aren't you? No. Okay. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name.
I, Bill Horton,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will uphold the law
that I will uphold the law
and support
and support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon.
and the state of Oregon.
I will abide
I will abide
by the law enforcement code of ethics
by the law enforcement code of ethics
and the department's rules and regulations,
and the department's rules and regulations,
while faithfully performing
while faithfully performing
my duties as police officer
my duties as police officer
for Oregon City, Oregon.
for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations and welcome aboard. Okay, thank you very much. All right, please raise your hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Cornelius Booker,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will uphold the law
that I will uphold the law
and support the Constitution of the United States
and support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon.
and the state of Oregon.
I will abide by
I will abide by
the law enforcement code of ethics
the law enforcement code of ethics
and the department's rules and regulations,
and the department's rules and regulations,
while faithfully performing
while faithfully performing
my duties as a reserve police officer
my duties as a reserve police officer
for Oregon City, Oregon.
for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Shut up. All right. Thank you. You can tell what everybody was interested in tonight. Next, we have a presentation also that concerns the police department. Joe Simon, please come forward. We have a accreditation presentation.
Madam Mayor, members of the commission, my name is Joe Simon. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance.
Welcome.
Thank you. The Alliance is a partnership of the Oregon Chiefs Association, the Oregon Sheriff's Association, and the Association of Professional Communications.
Okay.
And this program was initially established in April of 2001 to provide a body of work for Oregon law enforcement agencies to obtain. In other words, we have 100 standards that these agencies must meet that reflect life, health, and safety issues in your community. Many of the benefits that attach to accreditation would be increased service levels, decreased liability exposure, enhanced administrative oversight, and continuity of experience within the police department, and a commitment that you are constantly self-examining your agency to reflect the best standards in our particular profession. Now, the Oregon City Police Department was one of the original agencies within our organization. They were originally, they joined Oregon Accreditation Alliance in December of 2002. They were initially accredited in February of 2004. They were re-accredited for the first time in April of 2007. And this past year have undergone an on-site assessment for their second re-accreditation. That on-site assessment occurred February 23rd, 24th of 2010, and on April 6th of 2010, that on-site assessment report was reviewed by the Oregon Accreditation Alliance Board, which is a composite of sheriffs and chiefs from around the state, and the decision was made to re-award accreditation to the Oregon City Police Department. If I could please have Chief Conrad come forward. And I really must congratulate Oregon City Police Department for their commitment to a professional level of standards, their commitment to this program, to Lisa Nunes, who has been their accreditation manager on the last two assessments that I've been on with this city, and has done an outstanding job in preparing the agency for this. So it's my great pleasure to present Chief Mike Conrad and Lisa Nunes and all the members of the police department with this award that says, having fully demonstrated its voluntary commitment to law enforcement excellence by living up to a body of standards deemed essential to the protection of life, health, safety, and rights of citizens it serves, and having exemplified the best professional practices in the conduct of its responsibilities, is hereby, upon the recommendation of the members of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance Board, awarded the Certificate of State Reaccreditation. Mike.
Another reason to be very proud of our police department. Thank you for those high standards and that achievement. Next is a proclamation, and it's wonderful to be able to proclaim this week, actually I guess it's this week, as National Public Works Week, because this morning we really highlighted the Public Works Department as we dedicated our new waterfront enhancement area, John Storm Park, the Willamette River Trail, and the Willamette Terrace area. It was just a wonderful, wonderful morning, and Public Works did a great job as we celebrated, as well as did the Parks Department. So it was well attended, and we have beautiful new banners down there, so I encourage all of you to go and take a walk along the riverfront. So this says, whereas public works services, facilities, and infrastructure are an integral part of health, safety, and everyday life of the people of Oregon City and other communities around the world, and whereas public infrastructure provides needed systems for goods and services that are vital to sustainable business and a robust economy, and whereas the serviceability of public facilities and infrastructure, including its planning, design, construction, operations, and maintenance, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of engineers and public works professionals, and whereas public works services are provided through the dedicated efforts of public works workforces who are responsible for transportation, water supply, stormwater and wastewater collection and treatment,
refuse disposal, and other structures and facilities essential to life as we know it. And whereas in Oregon City, underground networks of pipes for sewer, storm, and drinking water serve our basic everyday needs. Above ground networks of roads and sidewalks allow us to travel safely. Surface water management reduce pollutants in our streams and rivers. And emergency response to flooding, storm events, and other natural disasters provides us with essential assistance when needed. And whereas it is vital in Oregon City to have a citizenry that is knowledgeable about important public works services that keep Oregon City operating reliably and efficiently, now therefore I, Alex Norris, Mayor of Oregon City, do hereby proclaim May 16th through the 20th as National Public Works Week in the City of Oregon City, and I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. I'd like to call upon our Public Works Director to talk about a little bit about some of the activities you've got going during this
Thank
week.
you. Well, this every annual Public Works Week, we try to visit some of our elementary schools in Oregon City. And this year we were at Holcomb, or yesterday we were at Holcomb Elementary School. And then tomorrow, John Lewis, our operations manager, and I are going to Gardner Middle School and giving a presentation on the water cycle, focusing on, of course, what Public Works does in the water cycle, which is provides drinking water, provides wastewater treatment, delivers drinking water, collects wastewater, and also manages the stormwater system. So we'll be doing that tomorrow, and we're having a lot of fun with it.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you doing that outreach. I think it's great to get that into the schools. Okay, moving right along to citizen comments. We have 2 people who signed up to speak. So please, when you come up to the microphone, you'll see you have up to 3 minutes to speak after you tell us your name and the city in which you live. We ask you to come forward. Kelly Clyde, followed by Matthew Crum.
My name is Kelly Clyde, and I am a resident of Oregon City, and I'm also the president of Oregon City Swim Team, OCST, and I'm here tonight to extend the following financial offer to the City of Oregon City for the sole purpose of making improvements to the slide, which is located at the Oregon City Municipal Pool. OCST believes that these improvements will result in a mutually beneficial future for both the city and OCST, and we ask that when you consider this offer that you take into account some of the benefits which we believe will be a direct result of the improvements made to the slide. These benefits include a more attractive facility, complete with a new slide and 6 fully functional swimming lanes with starting blocks. OCST and OCHS, the high school, will proudly represent Oregon City at home in 4 competitive USA swimming sanctioned events, as well as high school swimming events. Some of the other benefits we'll realize is a boost to the local economy, in part due to the revenue brought in as a result of these swim meets. We estimate that a 2 to 3 day split format meet would result in a possible 300 participants, and using Chamber of Commerce figures over 2 days, this could result in a $50,000 spent in the Oregon City as well as outlying communities. The improvements would also enable Oregon City High School to host swim meets again in Oregon City. Last year, Oregon City High School paid $1,000 to bus their swimmers to Molalla and for leasing pool space there. In addition, parents of our Oregon City High School swimmers have to travel to Molalla for their home meets. So Molalla unfortunately benefited from Oregon City community's loss. While it is possible to host a sanctioned swim meet with the current 5 available lanes, this option is not attractive to potential visiting clubs. These clubs have many other options, many other competitive events to go to in fully functional venues, which have usually 6 to 10 functional lanes. Hosting a meet with current 5 lanes would result in an expense to OCST rather than a source of revenue, due to the full cost incurred for a weekend meet versus, lost my place. Okay, additionally, finally, while the change of the OC slide may not be a priority in the 2010 budget, the condition and age of the slide is such that it will demand full cost of change, most likely within 1 to 4 years. This generous offer from OCST will ease the inevitable financial burden to the City of Oregon City, and if action is taken now, it will save the city over half of the potential income. The potential cost of the project. With the above considerations in mind, Oregon City Swim Team would like to fund half of the cost of the new slide, not to exceed $10,000. This offer is contingent on the following 2 conditions. Number 1, the new slide will result in a 6 fully functional lane with use of all 6 starting blocks, and Oregon City Swim Team agrees to the scope and timing of the project. Thank you for your time and consideration, and
If you have to leave that letter with our city recorder, that would be helpful. Thank you. Matthew Crum.
Gotta look good for TV.
Exactly.
My name is Matt Crum. I'm the head coach of Oregon City Swim Team, and I was also the head coach of the high school team. And I'm coming as a representative, just to kind of speak on behalf of the team and just kind of give a little perspective on the pool and the difference between 5 and 6 lanes and what that might mean to the city of Oregon City. And so when I'm pretty new to the scene, I first showed up about 2.5 years ago. We were able to host meets for a little while, and so for 1 year we were able to host meets at the pool. And I will say, as a high school coach, it was pretty easy for the parents and the swimmers to have meets there. And when we lost the slide, or when we lost the lane because of the slide, it was really frustrating for the parents. There was a lot of anger and frustration, but what I'd like to point out is that there was also a lot of passion that went in the right direction. And so I have seen, as the head coach, a lot of community support, and they've really worked together to raise funds. And we've already been a part of partnering with the city, who generously worked with us to get 5 lanes in operation because we were down to 3. And so that was really neat. And so we're hoping that we can continue this partnership. And as such, one of the latest things we've done is we had our swimathon. It was the most successful swimathon that we've had as a swim team. We've raised a lot of money. That's one of the reasons that we can offer this $10,000 as a nonprofit. But kids were going around this community, other communities, but really working to raise funds to make this happen. And we want to work with the city and make this happen. And that's what I think is so neat about the parents on this team, is that they've taken this energy and they turned it in a positive direction. And I'm really thankful to the city as well. And so I just also like to point out that we're really close. We're up to 5 lanes. The slide's going to need to be changed. We have this money that we can help make the change. The difference is kind of like a 1-day, 4-hour meet, which can only have about 150 kids, and then a 2-day, 8 to 9 hour meet, because there's time limitations and stuff like that with swim meets. And so you can only have young kids in the water for so long. These parents don't want to hang out at swim meets. And so we could take that 6 lane and turn it into a whole weekend, Friday to Sunday, and really get people coming from all over the state of Oregon and participating in this meet here in Oregon City, as well as getting the high school kids back in the high school pool. And so that would be really neat. I know it's really tough for a lot of parents to get off of work and then have to rush down to the Malala pool, because it is a bit of a drive. And so I just really want to encourage you guys and impart on you the amount of positive energy that's gone into this, and also thank you for your support and what we've been able to do up to this point. It has really been a blessing, even just having 5 lanes as opposed to 3. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I see no other speakers signed up. Is that correct? Okay, then we'll move on to our business agenda. As we look at that, is there any item that needs to be pulled off the consent agenda or reordered this evening?
AB, if you would.
Okay. That's the state shared revenue.
I'd like to pull off 8C.
And 8C. Okay, well then we'll take each of them. Yes, we'll take them all separately. All right then. Okay, we will then continue on with our business agenda, beginning with the police facility remodel update. Here, this is the evening of the police department so far. Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. We're asking the commission today to approve the contract between the city and JWC LLC to do the remodel for the police department. We originally sent this back out several months ago. We received 16 bidders. They were the lowest qualified bidder. And if the commission approves, we will award the contract to them.
Okay, are there questions of the chief? Seeing none, then may I have? Oh, yes, Commissioner Neely.
Have you had experience in the city with that bidder before?
I'm not aware of any. I know I have, and I'm not sure if any of the other department has experience with them.
And how do we check on the quality of bidders that we have not worked with before?
We actually had qualifications in the bid documents that went out that they had to meet all the qualifications. And in fact, we had one that was a little bit lower bid that came in, but they did not meet the qualifications because they had not, that particular thing they did not meet was 3 similar projects that have been done. JWC was the next lowest bidder, and they hadn't met the requirements that we set out in the bid documents. And that the qualifications were checked by Doug Roberts from Bill International, who's our project manager on the contract, on the remodel.
Oh, this is the lowest responsible bidder.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner West.
Maybe I missed something or overlooked something here, but the bid sheet, the JWC came in at their bid was $159,000. Yet on our agenda item it's $166,950. So what's the discrepancy, or is that the shower you were talking about?
No, that's the. If you look on the original bid document, there's with alternate. You add that bid plus the alternate, that comes out to $166,950, and that's for some ceiling work that we want to have done. We put some ceiling tiles throughout the building, not throughout the building, excuse me. Some ceiling tiles in the building, and all of them replaced.
And this is according to the diagrams that we saw this past summer? All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, motion please.
I would like to move approval of the police facility remodel update and a contract of $166,950 with JWC LLC Incorporated.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Is there further comment on the motion? Seeing none, Nancy, vote please.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Messina,
Aye.
Commissioner Neely,
Aye.
Mayor Norris.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Next item tonight is the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Oregon City and South Fork Water Board for the loan we've talked about for a couple of meetings. And I see that our general manager, SouthForkWaterBoard.com, is here this evening. Who is presenting this?
Mayor,
Fraser?
Mr. Wimmer's not here this evening. He's on vacation, well deserved, I believe. And so I just want to remind the board that you've had this before you on previous occasions. The IGA, I compliment the drafter at only 3 pages. I think it's the shortest IGA I've seen. It's going to be, we're loaning a certain amount, they're paying it back, and the schedule was in there along with the standard boilerplate at the end. So I don't think there are any I don't have any questions of John, but if you do.
If you have discussed it on several occasions and made some substantive changes to it, do you have any comments on it, Mr. Collins?
Just that the South Fork Water Board approved this IGA last Thursday on the 13th, and I'm here to answer any questions if there are any other questions. Looking forward to getting this behind us.
Are there any further questions? Commissioner Zeta.
Are we in discussion right now, or is this the time for discussion? Or
yes.
Okay. I just want to reiterate that I'm not
going to be voting to support this for the reasons I stated in the prior meeting. I would like to ask, because I know there's likely going to be a majority of commissioners that will approve this, to at least consider the possibility, because it is my understanding that last week CRW and South Fork settled the litigation between them, and that in the text of the settlement, which I'm not privy to, there was likely, specific issues or agreements as to rates and income, et cetera, whether the fact that that lawsuit has been settled and is set up a secure or an agreed upon income flow from rate payments, et cetera, whether based on the fact that there is this new situation, whether this IGA should be reconsidered in light of that new development. Ideally, South Fork should be taking care of its own, and if there is an increase in revenue to South Fork Water Board because of this settlement, I'm curious as to whether, in light of that, a full $2.4 million loan from the city is necessary now as opposed to a lower amount.
Mayor, may I address that?
Yeah.
Thank you. I apologize, I don't remember the exact meeting, but Commissioner Neely asked me either a work session or one of the meetings, how are we going to make sure we're not going to be back here next year with the same dilemma? And I talked about our decrease in legal bills, and one of the reasons I was confident we were going to have less legal bills this year is because we knew we were going to be in court with CRW now, meaning we were going to be in court this week with CRW, and that one way or the other, that issue would be behind us and the legal bills would be there. The settlement we did reach was for 74 cents a hundred, which is on or about our operating expenses, and South Fork very much still needs to borrow $2.4 million, but if you're considering the expense for legal bills offsetting part of our need for a loan, we had factored in that the legal bills were behind us.
No, it wasn't the legal bills. It's in my incomplete knowledge of what the lawsuit was about was that there was a difference of opinion between the two parties as to what rate CRW would be paying South Fork. And in negotiations in a settlement like this, I only imagine it's somewhere in the middle of where the two parties' positions were. So South Fork, I would assume, again, I'm not privy to the document, is getting more money than it was from CRW, but not everything it wanted from CRW, but it is getting more. And based on the fact that it is getting more, it seems to me that it should be able to pay or deal with some of these financial issues out of that increased aid.
Commissioner Nishida, I believe that's a fair and relevant question. To offset what you're thinking, CRW is using a well and is using less water. So in fact, our budget has an amount of money that we hope to achieve next year, but it is part of the budget to have the assumption of the $2.4 million loan at 3.5% now. So I don't see a windfall of money in any way, shape, or form through our settlement with CRW.
We have some of these same questions at our South Fork Water Board meeting as well. Commissioner Neely.
I was just going to say, I presume if your revenues are higher than you anticipate, your board may think about paying a little earlier.
That is in our plan if we're able to do so. Our objective.
Any further questions or comments? Yeah, I have a motion then, please, Commissioner West.
I would like to move for approval of an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Oregon City and South Fork Water Board for a loan of $2.4 million at 3.5% interest rate for not to exceed 7 years.
Second. Moved by Commissioner West, second by Commissioner Smith. Is there further comments? Seeing none, Nancy, the vote please.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Neely? Mayor Norris?
Aye. Motion passes 4-1.
Before we go on to this agenda, I am making a request that I presume it's going to be on a work session that have a discussion of how interest from this loan are going to be distributed. I don't know if you brought that on plan closed session at this point.
I think we talked about that in the agenda, not necessarily the next one, but a piece of the agenda. Okay. Yeah. Next item on our agenda for discussion is the Oregon City Municipal Stormwater Permits and the new elements and new requirements that are coming forward. Nancy Carter, Public Works Director and City Engineer, for the report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, once again. We've just received the draft new stormwater municipal separate stormwater and permit for the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, and we gave you a presentation at your April 10th meeting, I believe, that gave you a background on the permit over the years, history of the permit, what our current permit requires us to do, and tried to get you pretty familiar with the kinds of activities that the operations group partakes in to meet the regulations of the permit and all the different best management practices that are involved. And since we had the new draft permit issued, we wanted to come back then because we had told you there would probably be some changes with the new permit. And Krista Reininger from Brown and Caldwell is here. She's again prepared a presentation for you that will go over all of the elements of the new permit and familiarize you with what are continuations of our old program and then what are some new responsibilities. And one of the reasons, of course, I think that's important is to make sure the commission is well informed about what our requirements are for the permit. But also, Oregon City has always taken a proactive role in trying to improve water quality throughout our community. And we've always made a very, very strong commitment to this municipal permit and making sure that we're compliant and prepare responsible annual reports for DEQ every year, et cetera. So, of course, we will again continue to do this unless we hear otherwise from the commission. And what it does mean is there are quite a few additional requirements. And as part of my job is then to let you know that these new requirements will require more resources, and so that you have a feel for what we're looking at. It's not going to be in the next 4 months, but we will have to start planning for how we're going to address the new requirements, and we'll keep you apprised of what kind of approaches that John Lewis and I will be proposing for you to consider. So, Krista, would you give them a summary of what's coming?
Okay, so back to the acronyms list in case we need it. And I'm going to go over the schedules of the permit and show what we have in our existing permit, what we've been doing now, and then what the new elements are and the requirements. So Schedule A is basically the bulk of what's in the permit. It's our stormwater management plan, and I'll go through each one of these and say what the impacts are with the new permit language. And then each of these other schedules, we have a schedule to do the monitoring and reporting. Schedule C is just basically the list of dates when we have to complete all these things. And Schedule D is special conditions, so it addresses DMDL issues and adaptive management. So I'm going to start right out with Schedule A. There's a component that requires illicit discharges, detection, and elimination. And the way we've set up these slides is that in the top black text with the checks in the boxes, that's what we do now under the illicit discharges program in Oregon City. Your program includes conducting dry weather field screening, implementing slow response activities, controlling cross connections from the sanitary system, and responding to public complaints. So then these items in sort of that rough color are all new as part of the permit. To describe enforcement response procedures, develop standard operating procedures with pollutant screening levels. There's more stringent requirements about analyzing samples in the lab and mapping where your outfalls are. So in the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, I've done this on each of the slides, it's kind of consumer reports dots for money, staff, CIP, and training. And the white circle means there will be something, but maybe on the lower end. If you see a gray circle, that means kind of medium, and black circle is there's going to be a big resource requirement, because you didn't want to get into costing out exactly yet. We're not quite there yet.
And before you leave that slide, Krista, what I see this is as really what we do today is we look for illicit discharges through our dry weather field screening. But what this is going to mean is we really need to formalize the program. And we also need to educate our the folks that are out there doing this field screening, looking for problems, what to do when they find something in a more intensive way than we do today, and enabling them to be familiar with what kinds of tests they need to run at the laboratory. And then there are some requirements for following up with, within a certain amount of time, you have to have it taken care of and you have to report it. And I think the empty circle means that if we don't have many illicit discharges, which we really haven't had many in the past, we have them from time to time, it won't be a real resource intensive effort, but we do need to formalize our program. So it means establishing a program, and we hope that it won't be one we need to use very often.
I think a pleasant statement is some of these new additional requirements to one degree or another, we're meeting some of them currently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say in this one, the reason the circles are white, kind of on the low level, is I think it'll take some staff time to formalize the documentation, like she was saying, of the program. There's some additional money that might be required for lab analysis, and then training staff to conduct these procedures in a more formalized manner. So a lot of the things in the permit are going to require a lot of sort of training of staff to ramp up. And that's the whole purpose of the new permit is, or not the purpose of the new permit, but one of their goals with the new permit is to continually sort of ramp up what we've been doing over time and improve our program.
To do better and better.
The second program is the Industrial and Commercial Facilities Program, which is to basically be aware of problems at industrial and commercial facilities and conduct inspections and then follow up. And so right now there really isn't a formal program in Oregon City. We respond to customer complaints. And in your stormwater management plan, there's discussion of a plan to pursue a business inspection program because we were anticipating this requirement coming up, but it's yet unfunded. So again, it's kind of similar to the last one where we have to develop an inspection program, and we also have to track new industries coming into town to see if they, and the old existing ones, to see if they require a permit. There's an industrial stormwater permit that you have to get from DEQ, and we're supposed to notify DEQ that they have to get one. So in essence, we're doing a little bit of DEQ's job here on this one. So again, I think a little more staff time. Well, this one's actually a medium circle because I think having an inspection program, we don't have somebody out there inspecting now, so that's somewhat of a new commitment and training. Construction site runoff program, I would say this one is a little less because you have a pretty good erosion control program. You require sites with developments greater than 1,000 square feet to have an erosion control plan, and you review their plans and you go out and conduct inspections and you enforce on those inspections. So you have a pretty good program in place. So the new element here is the program's been very focused on sediment and erosion, and now they want more focus in the code, in the manual, and in your inspections on other pollutants. So things like building materials, concrete truck washout, chemicals, other litter. The education and outreach program, again, you can see there's a long list of things we already do. The bottom one, you provide funding for a regional coalition that we mentioned last time to provide education on a regional basis, and there's some training activities you do. You do catch basin stenciling. This is kind of a big one in terms of new requirements because we have to conduct a survey to assess or quantify changes in behavior that result from our education program, which is not an easy thing to do. We also have to provide training regarding, so under your new development standards, you require private developers to build water quality facilities. And this requires that we train developers or owners on how to maintain those facilities. So that's a big training program. There's another huge training element, so I put a black bullet there, that says you have to have a training program for all municipal employees that do MS4 related activities. So parks and open space, fleet maintenance, pretty much anyone that would have anything to do with stormwater. That's a big one.
Yeah, any of us that are working outdoors, so I see it mostly impacting community services and all of public works, to make sure that not just the stormwater and sewer divisions are really keen on this stuff, but that we're all acutely aware of how we need to be managing it. Which is, again, this is all good, and it's just a more formalized process.
Yeah, I think before we had very specific training requirements to train those spraying pesticides on how to do that and how to reduce that. We had very specific ones, and now it's just train everyone and talk about all the issues related to stormwater, so in their everyday activities they know how to reduce pollutants. Then there's a public involvement and participation requirement. This one's fairly minimal. We have had to, in the past, put out our stormwater management plan and get public input on that. And they want us to adopt a more formal public participation process to get the public involved in the development of our stormwater management plan. Post-construction site runoff, so this is requirements for new development and to have codes, design standards, which you already do. You have codes that require new development to address water quality. You conduct site plan reviews and you go out and inspect. But the new requirements are pretty significant in terms of what your codes need to tell them to do. So we need to focus more on infiltration and reducing runoff volumes. In the past, we've been focused on just reducing pollutants. So they want you to optimize on-site retention, minimize runoff volumes, prioritize low-impact development. So we're going to have to revise the design code and manual to address this, and also come up with a mitigation program for those who can't address it. So this is one of the bigger items.
Right, and we already, like Chris said, we do water quality and we've done detention, but as you all know, and what's really illustrated in the Park Place concept plan was that, and it's not just DEQ in this case, but I believe our community is really reaching out for these low impact development, stormwater management techniques as well. But it is a change, and I think the one thing I get a little concerned about is when the on-site retention exceeds the site's capacity, and how we deal with the flooding, and people are not used to have their own yards kind of getting all saturated and flooding over. So there's kind of there'll be a lot of evolution that occurs with this. I think it's doable, but it will take some time to get up to speed. And we have been working on changing our stormwater standards to include the low impact design standards. So we've got a leg up on that.
Commissioner Neal. I'll minimize you mentioned filtration. I presume infiltration rates a very great deal based on soil types and so forth.
For the most part, although some of these facilities can be constructed with amended soils to increase that capacity, but yes.
Right, and there's some pretty interesting techniques with over-excavating and backfilling with gravel and pipes and that to try to maximize the capacity of the underground to store water. But a lot depends on the site conditions.
Do we have in our code authorization for installing cisterns to capture and retain rainwater for domestic use?
For domestic use, like to drink it?
Or use it for flushing toilets?
For flushing water, okay. That's a building code question. Do you know, Tony, about that?
I've been to a couple of, green building workshops in Portland where that's kind of standard. I was wondering to the extent that we authorize it in our own codes.
I think we'll need to check with the building official. We had, that's, do you know, Bill?
I don't know, it has not come up that I'm aware of in the city. It certainly has been brought to me. So Mr. Spurb is personally checked with. I'm sure to the extent other cities do it, it's certainly allowable. We adopt the state structural code with certain exceptions. To the extent it's allowed by the state structural, or I guess it's the plumbing code, then it would be allowed. If other cities had to take an exception to do it, I don't believe we have taken an exception to do that, so we we'd have to do that. But we'll look into it and get back to you about what's required.
And it does almost take a separate plumbing or separate set of pipes depending on what you're using it for. And what we need to be really, really careful about is making sure there's no cross connection with potable water pipes in any way.
There's another requirement in the permit too to eliminate barriers to, in our code, eliminate any barriers to low impact type development activities, which we've been commenting on to DEQ. So that may be an activity that we have to do, is look through our codes and eliminate any barriers to that kind of activity.
One of the workshops I attended actually discussed using UV lighting to sterilize rainwater so that it could be used as potable water. So
There are a number of on-site sewage treatment packages you can buy these days, and it's something that I feel like I need a lot more training on it. And again, there's a lot of state drinking water laws and EPA requirements for drinking water that really would probably be the trump card over a lot of these things. So we would need to be, we're interested and we need to proceed very cautiously with those kinds of things.
I was just going to add, I know a couple of years ago, we used to require that all of our downspouts from single-family homes were piped to the curb and then taken to the stormwater pond. I know that's been changed, because we do allow downspout disconnect now, but I'm just not sure. We haven't had a request to reuse gray water at this point.
Sure, you.
This a few years back, where we did have residents in areas that had not annexed to the city or in the south end area making claims that their water levels have been going down, which they thought may be attributed to development. And so I think you almost have to look at it on an area by area basis. Infiltration of the soils may be very important in some areas relative to their use of the water.
Definitely. And I think in addition to minimizing loads, that is one of the goals of this additional infiltration, is to provide recharge to the groundwater that has been taken away in the winter. Pollution prevention for municipal operations, so that's basically our operations and maintenance program for streets. So it's pipe cleaning, catch basin cleaning, street sweeping, and again, the cross connection abatement program. And this one, there's a new requirement to develop a program more like an integrated pest management program. You have in your stormwater management plan, you address pest management through making sure anybody who's applying those chemicals in your city is certified and understands the proper application when it's close to water and things like that. So that will need to be ramped up to more of a formalized program. A lot of cities are copying. The city of Portland has an integrated pest management program, so a lot of cities are starting to look at that and customize it for their own cities and adopt it. So I would foresee something like that happening for that. And then also to address pollutants coming from firefighting training activities is a new clause in the permit. And then there's another section of the permit that's related to operations and maintenance, but the other one is sort of more sewage related, and this one is related to public facilities that you have for water quality and the private facilities that you're going to have all over the place now from new development, implementing your standards. So one thing that we've been criticized for is building these things and then ignoring them. So you look at them 5 years later and they aren't functioning the way they're supposed to. So they really ramped up this requirement in our permit to really track the facilities, both public and private, inspect them and maintain them, make sure they're being maintained. And that's significant, especially if you're going to have a lot of smaller type, low impact development facilities, rain gardens all over the place instead of one big sort of regional facility. It's going to really ramp up our maintenance requirements. And then these two sections of Schedule A are brand new. I talked about these last one, but we're going to have to conduct a hydro modification assessment plan to address impacts resulting from these increased runoff volumes.
And can you define hydro modification?
Hydro modification is the increase in runoff volume that we're getting from the impervious surfaces is modifying stream channels because they're having the frequency of elevated flows that they have is so much greater now from new development. So it's causing problems like you see in that picture where it's just ripping up streams and causing a lot of downcutting. That's basically what the definition is.
And that's in very recent development that this is being tracked?
In the permit?
No, I mean the actual hydro modification that's occurring.
No, I mean, I think that's been happening with urbanization for a long time.
And have we not had in our development code to date any type of regulation to address the hydro modification from current development?
All the past regulations, I mean, it's sort of how the stormwater management program keeps evolving. You know, we started out with detention, and now we're refining and getting more effective types of management practices like low-impact development. We're also discovering that it wasn't just pollutants in the runoff that are causing a problem; it's the actual volume. So even though it's been happening for a long time, it's never been addressed by the regulations. So all our development standards and codes have always focused on what's in the water, not the amount of it.
Sure.
Right, except for flooding. I mean, we have the detention standards that have been implemented in many communities have been for the larger flood control type storms, but this is happening with, 1-year frequency storms that have doubled in size and are happening all the time.
And is the requirement in the new permit, the assessment comes first, but once you have the assessment and you have all the analysis of what's going on, will the follow-up requirement be the actual adoption of codes and practices to address it?
This is giving us the flexibility to decide, do we have a problem? If we do, where is it? And what are the things that we as Oregon City can do to best address it? So a lot of the permits in California and Washington are they're telling people what to do. You have to include this in your development standards code, and you have to do these types of projects. So they're giving us 5 years to develop our own unique plan crafted to Oregon City. And then in the next 5-year permit period, and I was going to mention that because I have a black bullet here for CIPs, that really will come in the next permit period. So this would be identifying what our fixes are from a capital improvement project standpoint, and then the next 5 years, they're probably going to tell us to implement a subset of those projects.
Okay, so none of the implementation will occur during the 5-year period of this permit. It will be strictly the assessment and the analysis.
Right.
Okay.
That's what's required. Yep.
That's what's in the draft permit.
Right.
There could be changes. I don't know what they are.
I want to speak to detention a little bit because the detention requirements that we have had probably since about 1995 maybe in Oregon City, I think they've helped us somewhat. But you're changing the rate of flow at which the water leaves the site. You're not changing the volumes. You're just evening out that you still have to get rid of all that water because now you have all that pavement, but we're going to meter it because we're only going to let it flow through the pipe at a certain rate. Whereas before, in the older parts of our town, it just runs off, goes in the storm drainage pipes and goes into the channels. Now we in Oregon City, I think we're very fortunate in some of the large drainage channels we have in the very deep ravines. Some of them have sustained a fair amount of damage, and others are so well protected by not landscape, but trees and forests, etc., that it has helped protect some of those streams. So it'll be interesting to see what our studies show, and I think this kind of a program could, depending on what we find, it could result in some fairly significant costly projects. And I think what we're going to want to end up doing is prioritizing and finding out where can we get the most bang for the buck, where is the most damage being done that has an impact on the environment and on fish and wildlife, other water quality.
The low impact development techniques that we're going to have to use also help improve this issue, and so our development code will be a part of the fix to this as well.
Just out of curiosity, could you give us an example each of one of the well-protected streams you just mentioned, and another one that's been damaged and scoured out?
Well, I think that some of High School Creek is fairly well protected.
High School Creek?
High School Creek, it
Is
goes
that near
through
the
the Laughlin neighborhood. It goes behind the high school, and it starts way up like at 12th and Taylor, or up in that region. And then there
Is that the
are,
one that goes by the stadium?
yeah. Yeah, and as it gets to the bottom, you get downtown and it gets a little rockier, it goes through some pipes and but I think some of those steep ravines we have. And then I can say that there are parts of, Coffee Creek, the top of Coffee Creek, where it goes through some neighborhoods. John was just, conversing with one of the neighbors out there today that it's barren, it's been worked over with backyards. There is no detention in the top part of Coffee Creek. And then another location that we've seen some down cutting of the streams in Mill Canyon. There's been significant down cutting of the streams there too. Below the hospital, we've seen some down cutting of a tributary to Mill Creek. So there's some areas there that have been impacted.
This one is very much related, I think. We have to do a similar assessment. It's called a retrofit assessment. And what this is addressing is that the permit in the past has always focused on new development, and in terms of actually constructing CIPs in the system for areas that are the older parts of town that we never addressed water quality back then. This is going back and looking at those areas now and saying, are there some real opportunities to go back into the existing system and retrofit and construct some CIPs to address water quality and hydro modification in a retrofit plan. So, I mean, I think all the permittees have been thinking about combining these two into more of a master plan to look at water quality, hydro modification, everything, and come up with what would fit this requirement, so retrofits, and what would fit the hydro modification requirement, and have what Nancy is saying is more of a prioritized CIP list.
All of these, I can see taking or requiring a lot of community engagement, because most of these streams, with the exception of a few, go through people's backyards. And so I think this can help you understand what kind of an effort it can mean for Oregon City, because we have so many streams. We're lucky that we have so many open streams, but it's a lot of people to engage.
So that was Schedule A. Schedule B is the monitoring. We are, I think, in pretty good shape on the monitoring plan, because we worked on it a long time ago and we're anticipating some of the requirements. There are just a few things that we have to do that you're already out there. Did you want to ask a question?
After you finish.
Okay. We're already out there collecting samples, and we do this with all the Clackamas co-permittees to get more robust data at outfalls, in stream, and now we're going to be participating in a USGS study too for pesticides. So that's one of the new requirements, is to look at pesticides. We've never had to really look at those much in the past. We have to report on flow rates. We've never had to do that before. And there's a requirement that we're working on with DEQ right now to collect flow composite samples, which means having a lot of equipment out there to measure flow instead of collecting just grab samples and putting them together. We're doing time composites. So there's some new requirements, but I don't think they're significant in terms of what Oregon City is doing.
Sure. I assume that monitoring was part of the very first MS4 permit back in 1995?
It was part of the application and then the permit as well. We had to do a lot of monitoring in our permit application.
So the city's then been monitoring 15 years now? Are there any conclusions from all this monitoring as to whether all these BMPs are actually improving water quality? Do we have graphs and trends that document not just correlation, but like direct, identifying a direct result of this BMP or that BMP that we're actually getting better water quality?
We had to, the sample results are so variable based on the type of, where you're sampling it, what happens to be going on in that catchment area, what the storm is, how long it's been dry. So stormwater data tends to be very variable, and so you need a lot of it to show statistical results. But yes, we have 15 years worth, and for our permit renewal application, we were required to look at trends. And to be honest, I can't remember exactly what Oregon Cities were, because we did a lot of them for the Clackamas County permit. But for the most part, the trends in stream, and you can't relate that to any specific pest management practice, we saw some positive trends, meaning the lows are the concentrations in stream were going down. There were some that were flat. We only reported on things that were statistically significant, and maybe for a few parameters there might be some increases. But I was actually really surprised that they were as good as they were. Let's put it that way, because it's a lot of work to make a difference in stormwater.
Mr. Neely.
I just have to make a comment. It is usually almost impossible to attribute a monitoring event to a specific action. I know in fish survival issues, if something's going good, everybody's taking the credit for it. If something's going bad, they're doing everything else. So you can't do something and say, this is what's caused the change, because generally lots of other things are changing in the process. And so that kind of direct usually is almost impossible.
It's very hard. We do have a benchmark requirement where we're required to assess our load reduction, and so it's taking an estimate of, we do all these things and we think they're this effective, and so what should we be seeing in our results?
On the other hand, is all the new development and all the new impervious surfaces. That seems to me that it would be kind of like overwhelm
That's what we've been really
BMPs.
struggling with in our benchmark process, is that even though we're increasing the amount of loads that we're reducing, so we're doing a good job at increasing that load reduction, it's very hard to offset new development. And so I think that's part of why they want us to get at a retrofit program too, is to start having some capital projects that offset new development. And we're doing the best we can with new development, in terms of low impact development, but it's never zero impact development. We're always getting something. So that's monitoring, and skipping Schedule C because it really just dates. And then Schedule D this is a brand new requirement. We have to do basically a total maximum daily load waste load allocation attainment evaluation. So we're not attaining our waste load allocations now, and we think that some of the TMDLs are almost unachievable for bacteria. So this will help DEQ say, if we had to get to the waste load allocation mark, what would it take to get there and how much would it cost, and start having discussions about the feasibility of it. So that's a brand new requirement. And that will take some time to put a report together like that. And then we've been doing adaptive management over time. We've been, we have meetings, and you guys do an annual report, and I think when the annual report gets put together, you see things that, we should be changing this doesn't make sense anymore, we should be doing this more here or that more there. So there's been an informal adaptive management process, but now there's a requirement to formalize that and put it into a document. So that's pretty much it. And then just to summarize, there were all those little pieces that may not seem huge individually, but you add them all up. And again, the CIP column of this, I think, is more out in the next permit term. So that would be in the second 5 years, but the first 5 years of our permit, which we are definitely going to get issued in 2010, will need to happen in this next 5 years, starting in 2010, at the end of 2010.
And we will be working towards getting the studies done for hydro modification and retrofit, and having a little extra time before we have to implement a CIP program is good for us, because we're still catching up with our stormwater rate that was adopted at a graduated amount for over, I think it was a 4-year period, that we'd raise it a little bit over 4 years. And so we'll be caught up with that in about another 2 or 3 years. And then I imagine before that even we'll be bringing back, evaluating some of these costs and bringing back to the commission a financial study and looking at the costs and see how that might need to affect our stormwater rate.
So, Nancy, in this year's budget, do you have any money set aside for any of these elements?
We did budget for the MS4 permit, and John, did this include some of these items? You put together that budget? Yeah. So
eventually it'll be an impact of next year's budget.
Yes, and we'll see. I'm certain we'll have to start working on some things, because we don't want to get too far behind and be working on anything in years 4 and 5. But I think one of the important things is getting the stormwater standards completed and adopted, and then starting to establish some of these programs. And actually, John and I will bring to you next year's budget for sure some staffing requirements and associated with it. We'll try to work on some sense of the budgetary impacts and rate impacts this next year, so that we don't get far behind on that as well. And then our city attorney has also been involved in this from the legal standpoint, and he's been. Bill wanted to give, Mr. Kaiser wanted to give you an update on the activities he's been involved in.
Thanks, Nancy. And I just wanted a couple different things. One is timeline, and I think we hit on it recently, and you may have a better handle on. My memory is that we've, what's gone on is that the DEQ put out a draft permit, and staff has been communicating with DEQ, and the permit that Chris has been talking about is pretty close to final. That's going to go out to final public comment. They tell us that they don't want to hear too much more from the cities before getting it out to public comment. But it is still draft, and it's going to have to go through the public process. And I think the expectation is that it be issued in August. Is that?
What I heard this morning was end of August, that it would go out for public notice.
Oh, okay.
And then he was getting that approved today. So whether that gets approved or not, that would be the very latest. It would get issued for public notice, and then there's like a 45-day, I don't remember the number of days, but then the final issuance would be in November. That would be a very latest time frame for issuance.
I think it's pretty clear that DEQ wants it in 2010. The other thing that I want to talk to you about besides the schedule is when the previous permit came out and was appealed, the city entered into a confidentiality and common interest agreement with a number of other jurisdictions in Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and Washington County to allow attorneys to kind of work together and keep things confidential so you don't lose privilege. And in the meetings, we've talked about doing that again for the 2010 permit in case litigation arises again. And basically, the point of the confidentiality agreement would be that we could exchange legal analysis with other jurisdictions and not have that become a public record or open to review, or open to that we could keep it confidential. We don't have it finalized, and there's still some discussions, but you may be seeing that fairly shortly as well, in anticipation that if something comes up, we want to be able to keep legal analysis and things like that confidential.
Okay. So we don't have to approve the permit, do we? No, that's
DEQ approval for us. We're the applicant seeking it.
And we don't. Do we conduct the public comment here?
DEQ
That's
does.
all done at DEQ. Okay.
It'll be noticed in the newspapers, and so the city can provide comments if we choose to do so. And so when it comes out, then we'll do another review of it and see if we have any concerns that we think we should bring to you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner West.
So, am I understanding this correctly, that none of these changes really have to be implemented for 5 years? So 5 years is D-Day?
You're going to have,
or is it every year you?
When the permit gets issued in 2010, it becomes effective, and we have to have these programs in place. And depending on what you're talking about, some of it has to be day one. Some of it is develop a program, so it's got to be completed, but maybe a 2-year ramp up. In terms of training, the training probably is ongoing, so it depends on the requirement, but essentially the permit goes into effect day one, and there's some things that have to
And the permit will have different dates and deadlines.
Right. It wasn't that the Schedule C that you jumped over, is because those are still being worked out.
and I think those will be individual to different cities depending on, there's going to be another negotiation meeting with DEQ before they issue it for each city to talk about those specific dates and what is doable.
So factors in that would be what the resources the city has, or how bad they're really in violation of code, that kind of thing.
And we've already had meetings with DEQ, so I think they have a good understanding of our program, and there's just different cities at different levels. So some cities may get to do some of these things in year 5, where we might have to do it in year 3,
it's hard to keep Johnson City and Portland, treat them equally.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the information. Next, we have a consideration of the deed of dedication, public utility easement, and temporary construction easement for 1680 Malala Avenue. Intersection of Beaver Creek and Malala. And yes, is this one of yours as well?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. This is a project that we are completing the right-of-way acquisition on, and we have postponed construction for probably a couple of years as our transportation SDC fund gets healthy again. But this is a project that will add the right turn lane to, if you're going eastbound on Beaver Creek Road as you approach Malala, it'll add the right turn lane. And in order to do so, there were several properties that we needed to obtain a number of different easements. This particular one is shown is the Sierra Vista properties, and from them we needed a deed of dedication for some property, and then we also needed a temporary construction easement. And we have already passed, you have passed the resolutions that enable you to go forward with these further documents in terms of the right-of-way acquisition laws.
Commissioner West.
So Nancy, is this project going to be going on consecutively with the other one at Malala and Warner Milne?
I think we might wait a little while.
I saw this and I thought, oh, this is already ready to go.
Yes. No, really, actually, what was important about this was to get the design done and get the right-of-way acquired, and then we'll have a package that's all ready to go for a construction bid. But really, our transportation SDC account is like everybody's probably in the country or anybody that has system development charges. They're running low because we haven't had any revenues from new development. So we're going to be putting this project on the shelf for a year or two.
Oh, okay. Gosh. We have a citizen who wishes to speak. William Gifford.
Madam Mayor and City Commissioners, my name is William Gifford, I live in Oregon City, and speaking for the Hillendale Neighborhood Association, which I'm the land use chair, I just want to say how particularly silly I am that this is being brought up to date, and how we're anticipating these types of issues regarding things in the neighborhood to be more visible with Ms. Kushauer's involvement with the CIC, and this is the type of a thing that the neighborhood would like to know about. And so when I found out that this was on the agenda, I brought it to our neighborhood chair's attention, and she put a little posting on the Facebook page just to make sure that the neighborhood is aware of what's going on. And thanks for keeping us in the loop.
Other speakers? Or a motion? Okay, Commissioner Lee.
I'll move to accept the deed of dedication, public utility easement, and temporary construction easement at 1680 Malala Avenue, the intersection of Beaver Creek and Malala.
Moved by Commissioner Lee, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Further comments? Seeing none, Nancy, vote please.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Mayor North?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a report about the visitor center at the end of Oregon site. Is this Terry or City Manager?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I have a brief report to give you on the status of the discussions that have been occurring between the City, the Chamber, and the County. Do not have any document for you to take any action on tonight, so I just wanted to give you a quick update on some of the conversations that we've been having. I am meeting tomorrow again with the county. We are continuing conversation with them about what the contract would look like with possibly the Chamber of Commerce going into the Visitor Center. And there's still a lot of details, a lot of questions out there. The Chamber Board met this past Monday, and Amber Holbeck is here from the Chamber. And I think it's safe to say that the Chamber would be interested in such a situation for them to move into the Visitor Center and a possible rent situation with the city and developing a contract with the TDC of the county.
However, they still have a lot of questions that have not been answered from the county with regards to what the role and responsibility would be for them for the visitor services. So we are just continuing conversations between the parties, and I hope to have something more concrete to bring back to you in a couple of weeks.
Questions of Carrie? All right, thank you. We wait further notice. Next, we have the consent agenda, which has been pushed into yeah, so we'll first take the consent agenda, which now includes just the minutes of May 5th. May I have a motion for adoption, please?
Actually, I heard earlier we were going to take them one at a time.
We are, and
So,
it wasn't removed from the consent agenda.
if it's not too late, I'd like to remove them.
Seeing no consent agenda this evening, we will first consider the minutes of May 5th. So, Commissioner Nocita.
Okay, I have two comments on these minutes. One
We're an
is,
interesting thing. We spent a lot of time discussing the minutes. We've already, a meeting already passed. Go ahead.
this would be the first comment I would have would be on the top page 307.
Let's see. Let's get there. Okay.
Commissioner Nocita, the first sentence reads, Commissioner Nocita did not think the city should go through the CIS because CIS did not have the knowledge needed. If I might ask the city recorder to check that tape, because I think my recollection is the spirit of my statement was more that not disparaging the CIS about their lack of knowledge, but that it was the tribes that have the very particularized knowledge. And I didn't want to come across as like disparaging the CIS. So whatever the tape's about my recollection, I was just trying to emphasize more of the special knowledge that the tribes did have. And then down on the strategic investment zones, we had I think an extensive discussion that I don't even see reflected here at all, and about the hypothetical of whether if a power plant promoter came to town and was permitted to construct a facility when this strategic investment zone was in place, and he wasn't even asking for a tax break in the first place, whether the adoption of the strategic investment zone would kind of force us into losing tax revenue, because we did have the strategic investment zone where if we didn't, we wouldn't have to give anybody a tax cut, and so I think that's a pretty important policy consideration for whether or not to adopt a strategic investment zone. So on that section, I would appreciate going back to the tapes and having the minutes reflect that discussion.
Commissioner Neely?
On that point, I guess we're going to see the issues of the strategic investment zone coming back to us. Are we going to do the study session again? I think there might be a benefit, because I found out that I knew less about it than I thought I did, based on discussions with you. And you had to check some things too.
I'm still checking. Yeah.
I think it has to almost be another study session.
I'm hoping so too.
I will say, as far as these minutes go, on the Commissioner Communications, the sentence that read, Commissioner Nocita discussed the Court of Appeals decision and how it emasculated the state water quality statute. That is a very fair representation of what my feelings were.
Do we have further discussion of the minutes? I prefer to spend our time discussing real issues.
I do have a concern. I don't want it to sound discouraging, but if we're not dealing specifically in the city, you might regard the city issues that are before us. I understand the desire to talk about other things that we're doing that are perhaps important to the city, but don't involve the city directly. When we do that, I think it's necessary that we probably do that in an abbreviated way.
Yes, I agree. Okay, a motion for adoption, please.
Are we ready to
Well,
adopt it?
and I think the motion should say to include those changes if the tapes reveal that changes need to be made.
Are we seeing this in there?
These are the minutes.
Oh, no. If the changes are done.
We approve them with those changes. So, please, a motion.
I will move to approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2010 regular meeting as amended.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Nocita, second by Commissioner Smith. On the minutes, Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner West? Aye. Commissioner Smith? Aye. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Mayor Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. All right, the resolution on our eligibility, which is an annual resolution that we must pass to receive those state revenues. Commissioner Neal, you had a question about this.
Yeah, it's not so much a question. Do we ever know ahead of time before we go ahead and take this particular action what the monies are going to be?
I think generally we can get estimates through our finance department from the state what they will be, but we don't know for sure.
And the legislature hasn't met.
Well, no, that was a concern. Well, that was a concern. There was discussion that because of the situation, the budget of the state, that maybe they won't give us as much money as they used to, and that would be a concern.
Yes, it's in our budget document that we've been bringing before you and the budget committee. So,
but we have more knowledge than okay. This is a question. For that, I'll move to approve a resolution number 1010 eligibility to receive state shared revenues.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Neal, second by Commissioner Nocita. Further comments? Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? Aye. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Mayor Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. And then the last one is the report that we had from our Chief Conrad on the new officer that TriMet will likely provide if we pass this intergovernmental resolution. So, Commissioner West, you had a comment.
Well, I was just hoping for a brief summary of that. That's a new program, I'm presuming, and something TriMet really needed to be on board with. I think it's a great idea, but I'd like to hear a little bit about it.
Sure. We've been in discussions with TriMet to furnish one of our police officers to help patrol the TriMet transit system. The program or the officer is completely funded by TriMet. In other words, they'll pay for all salary and benefits plus 5% administrative costs to the agency to provide that officer. We would be one of numerous, I want to say 16 or 18 other municipalities or law enforcement agencies, I should say, that already participate in this. It's good as a city in the fact that we were able to call on TriMet to have a larger group of officers respond to a specific incident that we made with the transit station or one of the other areas along the TriMet routes that we might have trouble with. And also, it's anticipating eventually that light rail is eventually going to find its way to this area of the metro area, and everywhere that rail is terminated so far, it brought some significant problems and some issues. And I think it's good to establish that partnership now with TriMet to make sure that we have a leg up on some of those issues that may or may not arrive.
Thank you, Chief Conrad. It's fun for you to get to toot your horn one more time.
And our motion?
Approval of the TriMet officer.
He's just one of 16 officers, but he's taking go ahead and toot his horn. I mean,
when I was 16, there's more cities than that.
Moved by Commissioner West, second by Commissioner Smith. This motion, which provides the city with all kinds of upsides and no downsides. The motion. Nancy, vote please.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? Aye. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Mayor Norris?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Communications. We'll begin with our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many of you know, I've just been here a short while to see some of the discussion about the Cove project. And I wanted to let the commission know that based on, I told you when I came, I was going to be constantly trying to develop consensus, and my effort to do that, I thought I should look at the Cove like maybe one of the first things. And so I sat down with some of my staff and I began looking at the landscaping plan because it seemed to me that much of the consternation was about the shoreline treatment there. And I did look at the landscape plan carefully and realized that I thought we needed some sort of 3D diagramming or mapping of that, and also maybe some suggestions from an independent landscape consultant. So I'm asking David Evans and Associates to take a look at the plan. I also did communicate that to the developers as well, and I don't think I didn't sense any real objection from them either. The one thing I want to be sure that we're comfortable with, both all of the commissioners, the mayor, and myself, and any of our staff, is that when we're representing to our citizenry what it's going to look like, or giving our citizens an impression of what the end result's going to be, I've got to be extremely comfortable that those circles and doodads and thingamabobs and whatever you want to call them that are on that paper are going to materialize into something people are going to see on the ground that they feel comfortable with. And so in conveying that, I wanted to have something stronger and more compelling than simply circles on a piece of paper. So that's what David Evans and Associates will be working on, and my optimism is that something will come of that is more of a compromise than what the current plan is, and that will please some of the critics of the plan so far. So I'll keep you posted when we have results that they're going to be taking a review of. Commissioner Neal.
Probably more of a question for Mr. Conkle, but you've seen the plans forth. There were some trees that were cut recently, and I'm not sure that we taken inventory of the circumference of these trees that have been cut and will be cut.
Yes, we have an existing conditions map that shows on that.
And so we know that the plan more than meets the minimum requirements, I presume, of the replacement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that's one of the things we're actually trying to verify. And then take a look at some suggestions about other species, everything from diameter of the trees to the gradings and other issues down there. I will also want to assure the council or the commission that there won't be any authorized cutting of additional trees down there until I bring back to you the results of whatever Evans and Associates finds. There is some unauthorized cutting by some beavers, not ducks, down there, and I saw them when I was there, and they're pretty active. These are pretty active beavers because they have some pretty good sized trees that they're working on down there. So if you see that, I'm pretty sure it's a natural condition rather than something else. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Do you have questions? Do you have questions? No. Okay. We'll see the commissioner's report.
Sure. I just want to make sure that I have on great authority. It wasn't Vikings.
All right. For your liaison report, Commissioner West.
Thank you, Mayor Norris. I was just going to give a brief report on the C4 meeting we had last week, and this whole year we're going to focus on at C4 urban services and who's going to deliver them, what they all are, and who delivers, who pays, and what they are. So they started out with a survey for last week's meeting that they sent to all of us that are members of it. And here are two big statements that they started off with off the bat with. Cities are the best providers of urban services to residents and businesses, and they wanted us to weigh in. And I don't know if it's surprisingly, but everyone was in unanimity that we all agree that. And then the other statement that was very telling was the county should allow and provide services to island developments in rural areas. Well, on a 1 to 5 scale, everyone once again was in total unanimity that we would all disagree that cities should be the providers of services. So then you say, well, what's the problem if we all agree that? But because it isn't quite set up that way now. So that just was the background setting, and then we had a presentation from Cam Gilmore, the Department of Transportation and Development Manager. He did a PowerPoint for us. And the Board of County Commissioners' goal for this year is to identify appropriate services delivery areas and providers. And the reason why we're doing all this is because of declining revenues and increasing needs in their budget as well as in ours. So throughout the year, we're going to identify things and answer these policy questions. I did not realize Cam Gilmore in his department did building codes as well as roads. So this county started out with, well, what are these services? So the two that night that we really got into it, the two departments were the codes and the roads. And I'll start out on the roads because I thought this was interesting. I learned something. The county owns 1,400 miles of paved road, and 13 miles of them are outside cities and only 92 are inside cities. So, okay, fine. But then when you go to look at all these roads that are inside and outside city, the rural ones are 1,000 miles, and these urban are 316. So there's a discrepancy between 316 miles of urban unincorporated roads and then 92 miles of incorporated ones. So who's so the county is paying for those, and they are saying, well, budgets are tight, and with how things work, they keep the urban roads to a higher standard than the rural roads. So in essence, they're really only funding the rural or urban roads, and rural roads have zero budget. So one of the points they were trying to get to with this is if we have very large, unincorporated urban areas within the county, and if they became cities or had some kind of governance, there would be a method of them getting paid, taking them off the county's bill, and then the county could work on some of their rural roads, which is badly needed. So then they went through some building codes, and I've forgotten some of the things that Oregon City, we don't use the county for too much, but many cities do. And we, I think, and staff can correct me on this, that we, in the plumbing, we use them for inspection, and we use the county for electrical inspection. And we also probably use dog services, don't we, from the county? We don't have any. Yeah, we don't have any. So they were saying that, once again, as budgets are stressed, that they're wondering how they're going to provide this, because they do pay for the building or the plumbing and the permit inspections on an hourly basis, but it doesn't really cover their overhead costs, and so they're still picking up the majority of the staff on it. The other thing they want to get to this year is, so we talked about what kinds of services and where they'd like to go. They would like to get to reviewing, or have cities reviewing our urban growth management agreements in Clackamas County. And that is, by definition, or one of the basic, or one of the narrower definitions would be an urban growth management agreement would require, or it defines and requires management of unincorporated areas within an urban growth boundary. So as we grow, we have to decide who's going to provide the servicing identified. So we'll be working on this all year. I think they're hoping at the retreat we come to some maybe action or directions for action. So that's it for tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Just wanted to share a little bit of the weekend. And it was a great weekend at the Pioneer Family Festival. So it's the 13th year that I've done an event down there at Clackamas Park, and probably the nicest weather in the history of the event. And it was beautiful. It was just beautiful. One of the interesting things has been the luck that we've had with weather over the years. It has rained, and sometimes it rains almost every year at some point or another, but it has never once rained on the parade in 13 years. There's never once rained during the skateboard competition. So most of the key events never have they seen rain. Sunday morning, I woke up and streets were wet and was shocked that it come in early, and but it stopped just as the carnival and just as the BMX competition started, and was gone for the rest of the day. And so it really missed everything in terms of the event itself, and so it was a good year. I just wanted to thank so many people within the city who really worked hard to make this event happen. And first of all, Larry Potter and the Parks Department for helping out, and the park hosts at Clackamas Park, who always do an exceptional amount of work. And just, I mean, that's their home in terms of that park. They take care of it as their home, and they love it. And so they're always very helpful. I wanted to thank John Lewis and Jim Birch and Public Works for their help on not only the parade, but barricades, etc. So both parks and Public Works were really helpful. It was, I think, Thursday. They made sure the park was mowed a couple days before we started setting up, so that everything went well. Before there was a place in the center of the park, the road that goes through the center of the park, where most of the road had been covered by dirt in a previous flood, and I didn't really think much of it. I just figured we'll deal with that. And the next thing I knew, there was city trucks there scooping the dirt up and cleaning the road off, and I couldn't believe it. I was really happy about that. The amount of effort that they made to make that road accessible. I want to thank Nancy Bush for her help with the street closures, permits, the police department, the chief who assisted in the parade, the police department itself for the street closures, the reserves who not only helped on the parade but security all night at the festival, and thank you to all the other police officers that drove by at 2, 3, 4 in the morning to say hi to me while I was standing out there getting ready for the next day. The Clackamas County Sheriff's Department, their cadet program, who helped on various things, the crime prevention unit, and it was wonderful. I want to thank the fire department, Clackamas County Fire District 1, and also even Tualatin Valley Fire Department that participated in the parade with the City of Westland. It was interesting. I was finding it. The Lock Festival is happening in Westland, but we had the Westland Old Fashioned Fair in our parade, and several other entries from Westland in our parade. And I said, "Well, why aren't you at Lock Fest? Does anyone know about this?" And so it was a great community event in both communities. And so I hope that in the future we tie those two events closer together and do a giant two-city festival that kind of connects. So thank you all for your help on that, and I think the mayor also, I want to thank you for helping out, being there in the parade, and the city manager as well was there. Doug, I saw standing on the sidelines. There was all these kids standing by and crying, and he had this big bag. Those poor kids didn't have anything. And then Jim, I think, was down at the park a little bit working, helping out one of the booths. And Daphne would have been there, I'm sure, but she was in Hawaii or something. Anyway, I have a better tan from being in Clackamas Park for 4 days. She does from being in Hawaii, but anyway, it was great, and so thank you for a great year. And one of the last things I'll say is, living in Oregon City my entire life and spending a fair amount of time in Clackamas Park over the years, you never remember how great that park is until you spend the weekend there. And every time you go into that park, you just are amazed at how beautiful that park is. And it was nice to hear that from all the people visiting the park. We had vendors from out of state. We had people from Carnival from out of state. We had a lot of different people that came to the event to have an attraction or something. many of whom have never been in that park before, and to just hear them talk about other events that they've been to in the middle of the desert or other places, and to just listen to what they said about that park and how much they enjoyed being there. Many of them stayed in the RV park, so it was just a really nice feeling to know that people were enjoying it as much as we do. So anyway, I think that's about it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And I thought it was cool that for Lockfest, Bethlehem rented the trolley, so they were using that. And I too applaud the fact that the two festivals are beginning to talk about coordination a little more, and I'm really grateful for that to happen. Commissioner Nasita, work for you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 3 items. One, just to springboard from Commissioner Smith's discussion of the Pioneer Family Festival this weekend. I actually did take the trolley between the two festivals, the Lock Festival and the Pioneer Family Festival, and I thought that was a really, really great. It was the first time I actually ridden one of the trolleys, and it was
what?
Yep.
Look, you're confessing that in live, you know, on television.
I see. You already see the bridge.
Eddie Alec was complimenting.
So, but I wanted to just congratulate Commissioner Smith, because just when I was at the Pioneer Family Festival this weekend, it just dawned on me what a monumental organizing effort it has to be to arrange all the booths, all the rides, coordination of parking, publicizing the event and just pulling it all together. So it's very, very relaxed, pleasant place to be on a Saturday afternoon. And it was just, it just really gave one sense of community, and I was happy both to participate and just to visit. I enjoyed the Lockfest also. Just another confession, that was my first Lockfest as well. I will get it all out at once.
And your third confession is?
Well, that was going to be my third comment, actually. I did go up and stayed on the side of the lock and watched as the Sternwheeler Rose passed into the lock, and Captain Simonis was there with a big smile on his face, and I waved, and he thanked me for my assistance.
Commissioner Neely?
I'd like to point out that the mayor has no authority for resolving confessions. Make that clear.
I wasn't actually finished.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had your third confession already.
No. The third point I wanted to make was I want to congratulate the Oregon City Farmers Market for their Planning Commission approval. I saw Jackie Hammond-Williams up at the Farmers Market on Saturday, and she was just beaming with excitement and enthusiasm about getting that going downtown, and I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'd like to thank both this commission and the Planning Commission for making that happen, and very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, Commissioner Neely, go for it.
Could you remind us again the number, the year number of the Pioneer Family Festival?
13.
Have you been doing all 13? Wow.
And I offer an apology. I think at one point or another I said something critical about that many years ago. I just want to say you've done a tremendous job. Those things are very hard to get started, and we're probably some doubts at the beginning, but boy, you turned that into a major Oregon City.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to report from the commission standpoint, but yesterday I turned in a long overdue book to the Oregon City Library.
How much was your fine?
Well, I'm going to talk about that. No, this is, I just wanted to explain the nature of
Instead of commissioner's report, should we call this true confession?
Commissioner's confessions.
I'm registering a complaint on the part of library staff. The situation is this, when we reduced our hours dramatically at the library, we no longer had a ballot box there at the library, and they were telling me behind the counter they'd actually had a lot of people coming in asking to drop their their ballots there. And there's a couple things I'm thinking about. One is the library, I think, is a great place to have a ballot box. If we could bring it back, I think that would be good. I don't know what the process is there. But when that happened, City Hall then had a ballot box. City Hall is no longer there. The police department is, and I don't think that ballot box is there anymore. Is it here? Okay.
It's so convenient to drive.
Well, that's great.
Right by utilities.
I don't know what you do to bring it back to the library. We've got elections divisions not very far away, so there is in fact a drop-off box not very far away. But apparently, some of the patrons indicated they'd like to see the ballot box drop off again at the library. I don't know if that poses any great difficulty, but I think it's something worth exploring.
Have a response from Nancy I.
I've had a conversation with Sherry Hall, the county clerk, regarding that exact thing, and she indicated that since the county elections office is less than a quarter mile from our library, at least the library as it is right now at the former Danielson's area, it's just too close, and they have too few volunteers to make those runs. So it's only less than a quarter mile, around the corner, and they can drop it. So. When the library moves, we could possibly consider another one because it will be in a different place. But at this point, not at the Danielson's lot.
Okay. For my report this evening, I really want to thank the staff that put on an amazing event this morning. They all ended up wet at the end since the sun did finally, or the weather did finally change. But Nancy Crusher and her staff. Alita Romagovich, is that his name? And Scott Archer, Michelle Benville, who did the planning, all the people who attended. It was just, the city showed its wonderful side, and many people commented they'd never been down into that area before. So I think
more confessions.
Yeah, I guess so. Not for me. I've been there many times, but. It really showed, again, it was great to celebrate something. And you talked about the popularity of Clackamas Park. Well, now that popular park is linked by the Willamette Trail and then John Storm Park, and John Storm's family was there also, and we're very, very proud and pleased with that today. And then the walkway all the way up to the Willamette Terrace, and it's just really something we can all be proud of. So a decade in coming, and the celebration was great. Also, I want to remind everybody that May 26th is the passenger rail open house here in the council chambers at, I believe it's 4:30. Is that correct? Is the right time?
I don't know that down. It's about that time.
4:35. I have 4:30 down. But anyways, here in City Hall, I want to talk about the high-speed passenger rail. It's an opportunity for us to talk about the needs and wants and desires of Oregon City, and especially regarding our station and alignment that we already have. So I think that's very important. It impacts also Metro Policy Advisory Council. Commissioner Neely gave a report 2 weeks ago, and we're still debating what recommendation we're going to make to the Metro Council, well, we did debate, about urban and rural reserves. And the piece that he mentioned 2 weeks ago was what happens when a concept plan, local governments can't agree on a concept plan. Under the old system, if you recall, we did concept plans before we were able to approve any development activities on properties inside our urban growth boundary. The new sentence, or the new concept plan, is to be done prior to the bringing in of properties into the UGB. So the development, am I correct?
Yeah.
So the agreements have to be between, in our case, Clackamas County and Oregon City, because the property is essentially in Clackamas County. So this is what we're still arguing about. If the local governments responsible for completion of a concept plan under this section are unable to reach agreement on the concept plan by the date set under subsection A, then the Metro Council may nonetheless add the area to the UGB, if necessary, to fulfill its responsibility under ORS 197.299 to ensure that the UGB has sufficient capacity to accommodate forecasted growth. I'm sure you picked up the words in there that caused angst. It was the Metro Council may add it nonetheless. And the arguments were about, we've gone a long way with Metro, recognizing that cities are really where the game plan is implemented and the action is. And so why would you make that decision for us if we can't agree on governance? And my comment was, why didn't Metro just act as arbitrator, force the two governments to agree? But so that was one point of contention, and I think we agreed that new language will be coming back. And then the second one was the map that accompanies the urban growth boundary. If you may recall, then in the original system, the 3 counties had to agree on the rural reserves, and Metro had to agree on the rural reserves. But what they've done now is, because nobody really could agree, so not to stop the process, they bifurcated it. Tony, help me if I'm kind of incorrect on this, but so Washington County is making their decisions with Metro, Clackamas County is making their decisions with Metro, and Washington County is making their decisions with Metro because counties haven't been able to agree. So what's happened is that Clackamas County has tweaked a couple places on the map, Washington County tweaked a couple places on the map, and one county doesn't have the ability to tell the other one, we need to talk about that. So they wanted us to adopt a map without those tweaks on it. And we said, well, we'd really like to know what we're voting on, so we've asked Metro to bring that back so we can see where the tweaks are. So it's an interesting thing that's happened here. I think they've developed this system so that we can get this package to the state in a timely manner, but still conversation will be happening around the urban growth boundary, or around the urban and rural reserves. And the other big issue which does affect Oregon City as well is the demand for large lot industrial sites. There is a subcommittee of MPAC called the Employment Subcommittee, which has been looking at the needs, particularly led by the city of Hillsborough, the need to preserve large lots. They're very Metro has been very unhappy across the region in that we have an industrial site which is the highest ranking, biggest income producing kind of site, and it sits there for a few years, and then the jurisdiction will say, oh, let's change that to commercial. That sits there a few years, and they'll downgrade it again. So to preserve large lots, the region is trying to figure out how to do that. In Clackamas County, we're sending a letter to MPAC that I signed on to with all of the other representatives of the cities and counties and county this is essentially the question that the letter asks: are the assumptions still valid that underlie the 2009 Urban Growth Report that identified demand for an additional 200 to 1,500 acres in large lot configuration for traded sector industrial uses? And we question this assumption because it was developed over 2 years ago. The economy has changed. The recession has resulted in the 3-county region losing over 50,000 jobs, or the equivalent of the past 10 years' job growth. This is substantial, and we believe it ought to be reanalyzed. Secondly, the recession has produced record high vacancy of over 15.8 million square feet of industrial space in the first quarter. Many sub-market areas in the Portland region are running with 25% to 44% or more vacancy rates, and these statistics don't include additional speculative industrial space. So based on the current absorption rate that industrials use, it will take the market 59 years under our analysis to absorb this amount of vacant industrial space. So we're questioning the final paragraph says, taken together, excessive job losses and large amounts of vacant industrial space, these major factors call into question projections for near-term demand for 200 to 1,500 acres for large lot industrial uses. We recommend Metro goes back to the core assumptions and make new determinations that take into account today's reality rather than yesterday's optimistic projections. So that will be the point of discussion at our next MPAC meeting, and there's a lot of there will be a healthy discussion on that, and I'm sure Tony and Dan will have healthy discussions at MPAC as well. think that's all I have. Are there any other things to come before us? Not, we are adjourned. Woohoo, look at that.